my ex-partner had a psychosis. That I was so codependently in love with this person that the only way to make me leave had to be as dramatic as it was. I chose to walk on eggshells instead of addressing it because I didn't want to lose the person.
Is There More is the podcast where creators share how their darkest moments became the breakthroughs that changed everything. We're building a space for raw stories, deep connection, and real hope for everyone who's still writing their story. Brought to you by Dialogue Life Skills, the world's scalable solution to the teen and young adult mental health crisis. I'm your host, Megan A. Tully, and I'm listening. Today I sat down with writer and storyteller Gianna Shimone and found out that growing up with a mix of cultures, languages, food, music, and belief systems left her with a lifelong question. Where do I really come from? But what began as a question of identity turned out to be something deeper, a pattern of codependency, people-pleasing, and searching for herself through other people. It wasn't until a relationship with someone who entered psychosis brought her to a rock bottom and forced her to stop looking outward and finally look at herself. And in that mirror, she answered the question, who am I? With another question, does it really matter? This episode is about identity, heartbreak, creative rebirth, and what happens when losing yourself becomes the beginning of finding your own voice. Welcome, Gianna Shimone.
Hello. I'm so excited to be here. Thank you for having me.
Yeah, where are you coming in from today?
I'm in Bali currently still. I'm just about to transition back to Europe, but I'm still here and I'm enjoying every last minute of it.
Wow. How long have you been in Bali for?
It's coming up 4.5 years, which is crazy to say out loud. Yeah.
That is crazy. Where are you from originally?
I'm originally from Germany, but I'm actually going back to Portugal because my mom moved there, which I'm very grateful for because I don't really want to be in Germany.
Tell me about growing up in Germany. What was the best thing about your childhood and what was the worst thing about your childhood?
Ooh, that's interesting. I don't know if I would connect any of my experiences necessarily growing up to growing up in Germany, because even though my mom is German, she's not. Like she does not really like she's not typical German. Like she looks typically German. She's blonde, has green bluish eyes. But yeah, she's not. She's like very different. And I grew up very multicultural. The best friend of my mother is from ex-Yugoslavia, who helped my mom to raise me.
Wow.
And her late husband is from West Africa, Guinea-Bissau. So that's like the culture mix hub that I grew up in. My father is Italian, but he wasn't really much in the picture in the first 4 years of my life. But yeah, these are like the different cultures that I grew up on, like food, music, ways of living, religions, or just in general, like belief systems. So I did not grow up typically German, which I probably would assign to that is the best thing about me growing up, I guess,
Yes.
in Germany. But at the same time, it's also, it made it quite difficult because it was difficult for me to relate to others because I had such a different upbringing. Even though I wouldn't have it any other way,
Oh,
it was difficult sometimes for me to relate and connect to other kids, specifically Germans. That's why like I always had friends around me that were from all over the world, because that was like what I grew into and what I was used to and familiar with. So that's where I felt home. Like
yeah.
this constant stimulation of like different cultures and different ways of thinking and all of that, which just also brought me, I guess, to where I'm at today with being so open and loving of different cultures. But it brought up a lot of question marks about around identity as well. So like that wasn't also always so easy.
Okay, so the best and worst thing was kind of growing up in this multicultural environment with your mom and her friend even and her husband kind of all raising you together and then like you gravitated towards people who were more open and so did your mom. So that was your upbringing and you were really happy about that. But then also on the same coin, you felt like it was maybe harder to assimilate to the German culture and like relate to kind of like the broader country you were in. So it was kind of the best and worst was sort of like the same thing. And so going forward in your life, that raised questions about your identity, and that seems like there's a deeper story. Is there more to that? If you're new here, hi, I'm Megan A. Tully. I am the host of this podcast, obviously. I'm an actor and filmmaker from St. Louis, Missouri, turned content creator, and now I'm a creator at Creators Capital, where creators partner with owners to grow businesses that investors want to buy. So if you're a creator who's looking to be more entrepreneurial, or you're a business owner with a business that you want to get investors for, or maybe potentially even exit, please get at me on Instagram. My handle is @isttheremoreworld. Send me a DM, send me an email. It's megan@isttheremoreworld.com. I would love to hear what you've got going on, and I would love to share more about what we've got going on. But for now, let's get back to the show.
Oh, there's definitely more to that. I feel like this question around identity has been it might be a life's journey because it's like coming up every now and then again, where I just question, yeah, where am I headed? Where am I even from? Which I think to an extent probably everyone has, specifically with like a bigger assignment, whatever that means for people in life. Um, but yeah, it was literally around identity when it comes to background and culture as well. Because people tend to have problems placing me as well when they look at me. Some people think I'm mixed, some people think I'm Mexican, some people think I'm Turkish. Some actually, look at me and be like, oh yeah, Italian, that makes sense. So even like being perceived so differently at all times just was also just like, oh, okay, interesting. And then I didn't grow up with the Italian culture. So that part that is so visibly seen within myself, even though it's not necessarily easy to say that it's Italian, but like I do not look German. And that was obviously like a biggest thing growing up in Germany. So people always try to like place me. And then when I talked about where I'm actually from, but then I don't speak the language, I've never lived there. The only thing that I can connect to it is the food culture, which everyone connects to because it's Italian cuisine. So
Yeah.
like it never really brought up anything of just like, yeah, that's where I'm from and that's how I identify with, because what is it that I'm identifying with if I don't know what it is? Because I've never grew up with that culture. I visited Italy a couple of times with my father and my half siblings, but it was never long enough or also deep enough to connect to the culture really beyond the food because of the language barrier. My father wasn't necessarily keen about translating either. So there was not like much to feed off of to answer these questions. And then growing up with so many different cultures, obviously there was a bit of a mix up in my mind also. I identify with this culture because I identify to this person, because this is a person that is close to me, because this is a person that helped raise me. But at the end of the day, that DNA doesn't run in my body, right? So there was always like, yeah, question marks around like, how do I navigate that? Of also like growing up in a place that was so multicultural, but that specific culture does not run in my DNA. So I'm not stepping on anybody's toes either that is from that culture, that has that DNA within them. Um, so yeah, it was a very interesting upbringing. On top of that, also my mom and her best friend, which I call my second mom, they had a hair salon together. So I also grew up in that hair salon. So every day after school, that's where I went to, and it was like even more different cultures of different people coming. And that's literally how I grew up until I was, I want to say 14. Um, so that was just also so untypical compared to any, like I've never met anybody that had an upbringing like I did. So that was another thing of just like, yeah, okay, how do I identify with the way I grew up, regardless of the different cultures also?
So would you say that you kind of let other people's opinions, or I don't know, projections of you kind of define you over the years, and you sort of like, I am whoever you say I am kind of thing? Or have you always been like seeking to find who you are?
Yeah. It was more the seeking. I don't necessarily ever had like crazy big encounters where people were necessarily projecting something onto me. I think I made it so. It was way more my perception of the way they looked at me, or like, like a specific thing that they said, and I was like, oh, that has to mean something about me, which probably it wasn't at all. And I can't even think of anything right now. So that just also shows me and tells me that there weren't big significant moments where that actually happened. I think it was just later when I realized that just getting older and like having like these normal questions that everyone has is just like, where am I going? Where am I from? What am I here to do? And all of that, where I realized, well, in order to understand where you want to go, you have to understand where you're coming from. And then I realized, well, where do I come from? Because I
Wow.
don't really have like a clear answer to that.
Do you feel like you found that now?
I think probably I probably haven't found the clear answer that I was seeking when I asked that question back in the day, but I am at a point now where I'm like, at the end of the day, it doesn't matter, because that's just our meat suit, like that's just like not who we really are. Like there's so much more to me than, this body and what I projected onto it at the end of the day. And at this point, I identify more than an energetic being, a soul, than anything else. And that means for me, because a soul is on a constant evolution, I think this is my belief system, why we are coming here to continuously learn lessons for the evolution of our soul. And that means I've lived many, many lives. And that means I was born into many, many different cultures and many, many different skins, so like, at the end of the day, that's what it is. And that's what I'm coming from. And maybe my soul just needed that reminder specifically in this lifetime again. That's why I was born into so many different cultures and ways of living, to just be like, at the end of the day, it doesn't fucking matter.
Do you believe that people like humans have to hit their rock bottom for them to change?
I think so. I think that maybe not everyone per se needs it. I think it it is built on experiences, and again, I believe in the soul's evolution, so I also think that our lives are connected. So maybe you don't necessarily need to reach the rock bottom in this lifetime to make that step to change whatever it is that you want to change in your life. Maybe you had that rock bottom in the past life and you immediately come as this, I'm thriving for more, I'm thriving for this, I'm thriving for, like whatever it is that I want to achieve, that you don't need it necessarily. But generally, I do think that that's the case. I think that we as human beings are wired to avoid change because we are wired to feel comfortable in familiarity and in things and environments that suit us and that is easy. So we avoid anything that is connected to needing to change something because it's uncomfortable and we don't want to do it. So rock bottom moments are necessary for us to change something because it needs to get so uncomfortable that we realize if we don't change, this will become our constant. And this is not what we want. This is even a bigger thing that we want to avoid than the discomfort that
Yeah.
comes with a better outcome.
I once had somebody tell me, like, "It sucks that it doesn't suck that much for you yet." And I was like, like,
Wow.
"Wow, that's so true." That
I
pretty
love
much
that.
yeah, it's kind of crazy how when you think about it, it's like, man, it really sometimes it does have to get, like, just the worst for you to make a change, but I think it's just human nature.
Yeah,
So,
absolutely.
you're a writer now, you're a storyteller, but you told me that it wasn't always that way. Am I
No,
right
it
about
wasn't always that way. And my like, I don't necessarily think that I just had a one rock bottom, but I think the biggest one yet in my life that just like changed the most within me and was also the most excruciating experience in my life was when a specific relationship ended that I was in, that I was so codependently in love with this person that the only way to make me leave had to be as dramatic as it was. And how this relationship ended was because my ex-partner had a psychosis, which I think might have been a spiritual psychosis, but I'm not trying to like, diagnose anybody. Even like the word psychosis, that's just really what I gathered from doing the research and really, really reading the patterns, and which later got me into doing the work that I did as a coach and working through conditionings with people that had experienced trauma. Um, but this experience of being in a relationship with someone for over 4 years at that point when it started happening, or even a little longer, we were living together, we were working together because I used to be an artist manager back then. I lived so many different lives. I had so many jobs in my life. And he was one of my artists,
Oh.
um, a beautiful musician, a rapper, and singer. Um, So we spent so much time together working and living together and being in a relationship together that I just knew this person from the inside out. So when the patterns started changing and the behavior started changing, I was alerted, but I was also so stuck in my own codependency and people pleasing tendencies that I chose to walk on eggshells instead of addressing it because I didn't want to lose the person. So
Mm.
it was a very toxic environment towards the end because it was so difficult for me to choose me so that he could heal, because I was convinced I'm here to save this person. Also because there was a lot of energy around like people turning their backs on him, even including family, where I was like, I'm not going to join that
Mm.
crowd. I want to be on this side that is rooting for you to get out of this and help you. But it got so extreme that he just couldn't trust me anymore, that the only solution was to end it. And it was the most difficult time in my life because I, in my codependent energy, was still so convinced that we belong together and that I love this person and that that was real love and that was my person, and that I needed to do something and he just needed time and let me just give him the time and the distance that he needs. And then, like eventually we will come back together. Like it took me a good 3 years to get over this relationship because it was not just the relationship. I was so incredibly triggered by this relationship that all of my wounds came up. Again, the codependency, the people pleasing, the pick me energy, the energy of like, just wanting to be chosen because I was abandoned by my father and all the good stuff, right? Like this relationship was like the pillar to bring all of this up.
So, okay, so let me see if I got that. So you had it was a good relationship. It was an artist you were managing, and you thought he was the love of your life. You were with him for 4 years, but at some point he developed psychosis, and you were there to save him. And a lot of people in his life turned on him, and you didn't want to be one of those people. But it got bad because he started not to trust you, to the point where the only solution was for you to leave the relationship. And you recognized within the relationship, though, that there were a lot of things that were brought up for your own healing, and all your childhood wounds kind of were brought up to the surface. Did I get that?
Yeah, basically. It took me a while to see it that way because in the beginning, after the relationship, I was just in so much pain and I just didn't want to face it. Like to the extent that I truly believe that our body is communicating with us when we're in sickness or when we are in pain. I avoided being alone for over 6 months, like to the extent that I woke up, went to work, made sure I'm going to see someone after work, and then went home only when it was about to go to bed.
Wait,
So that
during the relationship or after?
after the breakup,
I see.
to just like
Okay.
avoid that pain of needing to face this heartbreak and whatever else was coming up, to the extent that one day then I went roller skating with a friend, and I don't know if the girls behind me were just not able to like skate well, or if they were like a little drunk or whatever, or they didn't pay attention. They fell, and then they accidentally kicked my legs from behind that made me fall, but like in a way that like a movie scene. Like I flew
Oh,
up and flew down, and then I landed with my tailbone on one of the wheels of the skates of one of the girls, or whatever it was. Like, obviously, I don't know, but that's how it felt like.
Oh my God.
I was immediately deaf and blind for like probably 2 minutes, because like the shock that went through my system was so extreme. It was so I've never in my life felt something physically so painful,
Oh,
that I
whoa.
was just sitting there, and like I literally couldn't see and hear for like, again, what is time and what is time in a situation like this. But it felt like about a minute or two. Like, it was long enough to be like, am I ever going to see you again? Like, what the fuck is happening? It was terrifying. I went to the hospital. Like, they picked me up because I couldn't walk. And it wasn't broken, but it was so heavily bruised. I wasn't able to sleep for like 3 nights, because every position was painful, because it's like the middle
It's
point of your body, right? The only position that was the least painful was standing.
oh.
And later, I have this book that relates psychosomatic and, like things that are happening in your body to the emotional things that you need to find resolution to.
Yeah.
And since that is like the midpoint of your body, and it is connected to your back on your spine, is like you are avoiding to really stand in life, stand on your two own feet, and stand in um, um, your
That's the root chakra.
exactly. It's the root, it's the safety, like all of that. So I was like, that makes so much sense. And then life was literally, sit your ass down, look at your stuff,
Mm.
heal that. So I was, even though I couldn't sit necessarily, I
Dance
couldn't
your ass off,
avoid,
no.
right?
Literally.
But I
How long
couldn't avoid it longer.
Yeah, how long were you okay, so you had to face yourself because you got physically injured. Also, I've been there too, and it was the biggest blessing ever, even though it
Yeah.
was so devastating, but I get it. So, how long were you down for?
I mean, because there's nothing you can do about it, but to just like let it heal itself by giving it time. About a week, I was not doing much, but like being at home and laying in bed and then walking around, because it was so painful to lay down. Um, and then I think I had a second week of work, and then I started going back to work, and I had like this donut pillow
Oh.
thing to sit on that I think people usually get for hemorrhoids. Um,
My god.
so it at some point it got funny, but it was very, very painful. But I'm a person that has dark humor. I think that's the only way of going through like the toughest times in life, to just like try to find the fun in it. So that's what I try to do, and it somewhat worked. So yeah, at some point it got better.
So, you had to face yourself for, I guess, like, 1 week or something. What was that time like?
When I was picked up, and I was in the ambulance, and then also on like in the waiting area on that bed. This is when I cried again for the first time after such a long time, because the only person that I wanted to call was him. And I
Mm,
was like, "Oh, no." I tried to avoid this pain so long, and now like it came all together. So it was pretty much the same thing in that week. It was just really about like letting the tears roll, realizing that it is necessary and that it's nothing that you can avoid or should avoid, because that's the only way is through. It's really what it is. Like the only like you have to um allow yourself to feel to heal it. The only
mm,
way to heal it is to feel it. And that's one of the biggest lessons that I got out of it. I journaled a lot. I meditated a lot. I allowed myself to cry and hold myself through it, and just realized that at the end of the day, that is the only solution. And it actually made me feel better. So like I was grateful for that. But it's yeah, it took me almost 3 years to really get over it, because there was just also a lot around that energy that I felt like, let him just have his space. So I was also simultaneously waiting on him to come
oh,
back. So I think I elongated that process of feeling through it because I was waiting on him. So I did it to
wow.
myself at the end of the day.
Well, I bet that happens a lot where people, like, kind of I don't know, hope and dream that they're gonna come back, or they just don't let go because of the possibility that they could come back.
Yeah.
And I don't know if I've ever been on that side of it, unfortunately. I'm always the one who's like, but I have, um, been the receiver of that and, like, known about it and felt it and experienced it, and it's, like, really, really sad because I know that somebody's waiting for me, right? But I'm like, I'm not indicating I'm coming, And so it's just like, it's just really sad because there's really nothing you can do because you can't tell your brain, like, you can't really tell your brain something that it doesn't believe to be true. But can we backtrack for just a second? How did he get psychosis?
It was just unaddressed trauma at the end of the day. It flipped pretty quickly, a little bit out of nowhere for me. But when I look back at it now, I can see that there were different other signs prior to like the actual moments where I felt like, okay, something is really off here. Um, but yeah, it was just unaddressed trauma. I think that's just really what it is. He like I don't really know because he traveled and then he came back a different person. So I don't know if something specifically happened there. So
Oh,
I don't really know. And then he's an artist. Like every artist has phases where they are going through where they're like, also an identity crisis or like, what's my next project going to be? So like I knew that as well. So I think I assigned it more to this, but then, yeah, he came back from this trip and it was like so severe, very paranoid, to the extent of like destroying the apartment looking for bugs and very convinced that we are being listened to. And at the end of the day, being convinced that I was part of it. And that was the moment where I knew like I had to go because I don't really know where this is going to lead to, if it's going to get physical or if it's going to get um, even more emotionally distressing. Um, so yeah, it was quite extreme to experience this.
and how
But
old were you at the time?
like 26, 27.
Wow.
Yeah.
So after kind of getting through that initial phase of like waiting and seeing, which by the way, it makes sense that you would do that because also you didn't know what happened when he was away and it was just like a switch and you were like, what? Like that's so confusing and like also traumatizing for you too. So
Absolutely.
I
Yeah, yeah.
tell me what was it like before he had a psychosis? Like what was your relationship like before that?
It was beautiful. Like if I look back at it now, knowing what I know now and being further in my own evolution and understanding of my trauma and my conditionings, there was definitely some codependence already happening before that. Um, but it was in the most healthiest way possible, I guess. I don't know how to say it differently than that, but there was always like a codependent dynamic, which I again just realized way later because um, I was managing his life because he was one of my artists. So there was always a little bit of that energy of like feeling like I needed to take care of him.
Okay, so you got a lot of stuff that you found out about yourself in retrospect that you had to undo. So what was the process of kind of healing from that, like
Yeah, I mean, I'm absolutely grateful for that experience because as traumatizing and painful as it was one of the best things that ever happened to me because I realized that I don't want to do that job. I don't want to be in that energy of like taking care of someone else to that extent and managing their life. But at the end of the day, also like I realized where I'm at now that it was a necessary step because I understood how to manage someone's career, which now I can use for myself. And I would say I was always a writer. Like I was always writing poetry. And that is one of the things that was birthed out of that situation. I started processing this pain by writing again and by writing poetry. And so that breakup was in 2017. And then I was writing throughout these 3 years to just like cope with the pain. And then when COVID hit, I started putting it together into a book. And then I self-published this poetry book in on November 11th. And It's called Finding Me. It's still out there if you guys are interested. And it just like that's really what that journey was. It was about finding me because I totally lost myself in that relationship because I made everything just about him because it was his career that we were trying to push. So it was all about him, which I made it so. Like it was not that he made me do it, right?
Yeah.
Um, I chose to do it, and that is another thing that like helped me to realize that I used to do that in my dynamic and relationship with my mom when I was a child to an extent. And that also that relationship and that breakup and it being so traumatic and um, dramatic, that is what I realized as well. Like that the codependency energy was birthed way before that relationship even started.
What
So
did
yeah,
you see for your mom? Like, what was that like?
do you mean the relationship in general?
Yeah, like you said, you used to do some of that stuff for your mom when you were a kid.
Yeah, I mean, my mom was a single mom, so it's the usual parentified child
Mm,
dynamic. So there were just like without realizing, like we became really, really close friends. At some point, more than being a daughter mother relationship, which at the beginning was amazing because it felt great. Like I was a teenager, I was like, "Hey, my mom is so cool," and all of my friends were saying like, "She's so cool." But at the end of the day, what I realized was that I needed a mom, not a friend. I had
yeah.
friends. So I changed in that dynamic because um there was like just this missing part of yeah, just having that adult person be the adult person. Not that I like took over like crazy a lot of tasks, but sometimes it felt like I needed to hold her emotionally, whereas it should have been the other way around. Um,
Mhm.
and yeah, that was difficult at times as well. So this breakup just broke open so much within me that helped me to become the person that I am today, which again I'm so grateful for. And yeah, it birthed me into writing again. And it's interesting to see like even when like so many things are shifting and changing, every time there's a relationship that I'm in and it is ending, I find myself writing again on
Mm,
another level. I'm writing throughout the entire time, but every time there's an ending, it just pours out of me. And I feel like with I'm writing my debut novel now, which is a whole different journey and a whole different task and a whole different avenue of writing than poetry. And I feel like I'm just realizing this now, saying that I feel like it might be the result of the relationship ending between me and Bali. That this time is not a person, but this time it is a time of my life. It is a place that I lived and called home for so long. So yeah, that's something that I need to journal about because that it literally just came up by talking now. So that's interesting.
what is the title of your debut novel?
I'm not 100% sure yet what it's going to be, but what I can say is that it was or is being birthed out of a good night story that my mother used to tell me, which is a story about me as a child. It is in German, but it is called, translated, it is called Gianna in the Blue Ballet Shoes because I love to dance. And the story is about the persona Gianna in that story finds a box in the attic, I think, and it's blue ballet shoes, and she puts them on, and then magically all of the other boxes in the attic move around and create a stage, and she starts dancing, and then there's a spotlight, and all of that is happening. And then in that story, she wakes up, realizes it's just a dream, but then goes to the breakfast table, and then there's a box, and she opens it, and there are blue ballet shoes in, and yeah, the mom gives a box to her. So that's like the initial story from my mom. And I'm piggybacking off of that story and creating a narrative around the life of that person later in life, in her mid 20s, losing that magic within herself, losing that purpose and that calling that she has to be on stage and finding her way back into it. It has
Mm.
a little bit of like, think Harry Potter for adults, but more with like potions and manifestation and eerie signs everywhere instead of like, using a wand for something. But yeah, I'm like 10,000 words in chapter 4. There's still so much to go, but yeah, that's the idea.
That sounds so cool. I can't wait to read that. I can't wait to read the untitled Blue Ballet Shoes. It's gonna be
Yeah,
so good. Where can we find your poetry?
pretty much everywhere online.
Cool. Okay, I'll link that in the description below so y'all can check it out. And was that like the turning point and you realizing because you kind of I mean you said you written throughout every relationship, right? So like you never really stopped, I don't know, doing what you love, but you said like the world opens up more whenever there's an ending. So, was the turning point of you being like, "I'm gonna focus more on myself" when you kinda published your first poetry book, or was there a different turning point that you were like, "Oh, this is the moment I was like, I'm gonna live my life for me."
I'd say that was definitely the beginning of that turning point. There was definitely a change within my way of seeing life and the confidence within me to be like, no, that's what I'm meant to be doing. And at the end of the day, I'm a Leo. I'm meant to be seen. But I think that's like one of the biggest things that Leos deal with. That's the biggest want that we have to want to be seen, but at the same time, it's the biggest fear that we have to face as well, because that means we are open to being judged, which we really, really dislike. I mean, who likes it? But it's a thing for Leos. Um, so it was an interesting journey, but like just in general, reverting back from putting someone else in the center of my attention and putting myself there was the biggest turning point already of like, no, I'm worthy of being perceived. I'm worthy of being in the center of my own life. And I actually have something to say. And I actually have something to say that people might be interested in, which I feel like has been like a thing and a journey and a reoccurring lesson in my life in many, many different ways. I reverted into doing coaching, mindset coaching with people. Now I'm coming back to writing and storytelling and putting myself in the center again. Because when I was coaching, just as much as I loved that work, I didn't put myself in the center again. There was again a part of me that felt like, let me put other people there because I'm so good at reading patterns and I'm so good at helping people. Let me do that. And I think that was just like almost a revision of what I was doing in that relationship of trying to heal him and trying to help him. So when I did the coaching, it was almost like that again. Whereas now I'm just like, I'm really clear about no, I want to be that artist. I want to be the center of my own life. I have something to say and I will help and heal people, quote unquote, through my work, but it doesn't have to be me anymore holding people's hands and working with them through their trauma. Not necessarily saying I'm never going to do this again, but my focus needed a shift. And this is exactly in that transition that I'm in right now to make that happen.
Do you find it hard to stick to that?
Um, yes. Short answer, yes. Um, just knowing that I actually wrote a Substack around that of like how writing finds itself back to me,
Mm,
which then I consider it because of that and many, many different other reasons. I consider it my calling, and the entire Substack is about why your calling keeps on calling you.
mm,
Um, which is technically also the lesson that I want people to take out of the debut novel that I'm writing. Um, and I think that you can't outrun your purpose. You can't outrun your calling. It will keep knocking on your door if you want to or not. You make it easier on yourself if you're just following it instead of running away from it over and over and over again. Trust me. You heard my story now. I know it. I lived it. And I'm trying this time to not do this again. But I have to be honest, I haven't written a word in probably a month when it comes to my debut novel, but also because I'm leaving Bali. There's so much that I have to handle. There's so much I have to handle with my dog. So I'm trying to have compassion with myself because I know I will get back to it because the ideas are already coming and trickling back into my mind as well. But yeah, it is not the easiest sometimes to stick with it because it feels like such a big thing and it's scary too. You know, just as much as I know that that is my calling, that's what I'm meant to be doing, it doesn't mean that it's easy.
stuck with me the most about my conversation with Gianna is that sometimes healing is not always linear, and sometimes it takes heartbreak or an injury or, I don't know, like thinking that things are going to be different or things are going to be like they used to be for a prolonged period of time in order to really break yourself open and find yourself again. And I think so many of us can relate to that, but not all of us do the work it takes to get to the other side of that, which is why I really enjoyed this conversation with Gianna, and I hope you guys did too. So if you like this video, if it did something for you, send it to a friend and subscribe to the channel for more videos like this. That was Gianna Shimone. I'm your host, Megan A. Tully, and this has been Is There More? Thanks for listening.